now. Welcome to the Tennishackery podcast. This is episode number 20. Tennishackery is the place where we discuss all things that relate to the fundamentals, the fitness, and the mind game. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, X, which used to be Twitter. Tennishackery.com is our website. And the video version of the podcast goes to YouTube, and the audio version goes to Spotify, Apple Podcasts. So please feel free to use your favorite podcasting app, and you should find Tennishackery at Tennishackery with a Y. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, and review. We highly value your feedback. Having said that, today we have a full house. Hi, Soham, Alex, and Craig. How are you guys doing?
Good to be back.
Yeah. So the previous two episodes have Soham and I had been doing it. We've been like going through, giving our commentary on the happenings in the world of tennis, including the Aussie Open. So it's great to have you, Alex and Craig, back. So let's get right into it, I guess. So the Australian Open just concluded like a day or two back. So what are your broad thoughts, Alex, Craig? I'll start with you, Alex.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching Sabalenka and Keys,
Hmm.
the finals. I enjoyed watching Keys the whole tournament. I really can see so much improvement in her. Um, and like Sabalenka, I've always been a fan of her. Like I think she's super tough and she's very funny, and she's
Yeah,
just like she just goes for it and she leaves everything on the court. And to see Keys, similar game style, be able to like step up that way against her, I thought was huge, and also against
yeah,
Iga.
yeah,
So I really enjoyed that match. And then Sinner and Zverev, I really enjoyed that too. But I think that's what we're gonna get into a little bit more of, like the mental side of it all.
right.
How about you guys? What stood out for you guys when it comes to like the mental side of the Aussie Open?
Yeah, I agree with you, Alex, with Maddie. Watching her and her game style grow and mature over the last 12 months or so, playing a lot better mentally and physically, and then rolling through. And I'm going to take a little credit for Maddie's run here, because in the last episode, I don't know if you remember, guys, that I was on, I suggested there was, yes, Tarun is
The
calling
big
it.
three.
I said there was a big three in ladies tennis. And obviously, Madison, can you go back and check our subscribers and see if there's a Maddie Keys? I think she goes by Monkey Keys. See if she's subscribing, because I think
Yep.
I lit a fire under her when I said there was a big three in ladies that she didn't like very much. I guess
Yep.
Coco, Iga, and Sabalenka got theirs for sure. At least Maddie, that's pretty impressive, right? To take
Yep.
out, when you look at the big three in men's, and if there is such a thing now in the ladies, to take two of
Yep.
those three out in a
Yep.
semifinal and final back to back does not happen very often, if at all. And to do that in their absolute prime, when Iga had just was selling bagels
Yep.
and breadsticks to her last couple
Yes.
opponents
True.
and looking unstoppable, and Sabalenka, two-time defending champion, and for Maddie to come in and just see like what the heck, and that was beyond impressive, and I was
Incredible
so
run.
happy for her, and just a great effort. So very happy. And then yeah, it was somebody who in the men's final, mentally, physically balanced, tough, versus somebody who maybe is somewhat mentally and somewhat physically balanced, but maybe not as balanced and not as tough. And we'll obviously touch on some of those things coming up.
Yep. Uh, Soham, what do you think? What do you felt were the broad trends and the your impressions of the Aussie Open? I know we kind of got the semifinals lineup almost right, and then we had a good preview. What do you think?
Yeah, like I told you, I predicted Madison Keys would upset Iga.
You did.
I think she's been playing well. She beat
She,
on her en route to the championship. She beat actually four top 10 players, which is extremely impressive. And probably would have beaten Coco too if if Svitolina hadn't beaten her. So that would have been even more impressive. So great run. Really happy for her because I think she's always had the talent. In fact, I've seen her live when I used to volunteer at the Mubadala Open in San Jose before, and very impressive. I actually watched the entire final, and you know, the way her attitude was, her just focus, her athletic ability, and just able to just stay in the moment. I thought she did a fantastic job in the final set. She was serving first, and she kept putting the pressure on Sabalenka, and eventually she was mentally tougher in the end and was able to break and win the championship. So really great way and a well-deserved winner in the women's. In terms of the men's, I had there were a lot of good matches, a lot of five-setters actually in the tournament.
Yes.
And I don't think there were too many retirements. There was one significant retirement.
Which, by the way, you predicted would go on to win the tournament, by the way.
Yeah. No, I did not. Wait, I said that Novak would reach the finals. But I think the biggest takeaway for me is I think there are a lot of young players who stood out. A lot of young talent out there: Fonseca, Mensik, Lernatian. Monfils had a great tournament, really good run. He had to retire, unfortunately, but I think he fought really well. And then obviously I'm always rooting for Ben Shelton. Yep. Exciting young American player. I honestly feel like if he can improve a few parts of his game, like the return of serve and the backhand, I think he's definitely going to be like top 5-6 player in the world and probably the top American. Very impressive. He really fought hard in the semifinals, actually, especially the first set, and then Sinner was just too solid in the end in the second and third sets. Novak, special word. I think if he wasn't injured, I think he would have definitely beaten Zverev. I don't see Sasha beating Novak if Novak is fit. I just don't see it.
I agree with that.
I mean, Novak is just too experienced, and as much as I'm not a Novak fan, which I think many people already know listening, I just think like in certain, like the way he played Alcaraz was amazing, and if he wasn't injured, I think he takes out Sasha. But I think in the end, I think the right Sinner was the right sort of champion. I think he was just way too solid for Zverev in the final. Zverev he did not have a lot of things working, and I think whether it's like worrying or having not won 2 previous finals, I don't know what it was, but he was outfought, outthought, outplayed, and I never saw him having any chance to win. I think Sinner is just the best player right now on hard courts. So yeah, great Open. Look forward to the French. It's just a little bit too much of a gap between the Australian and the French. Yeah. So yeah.
Alex and Craig,
Tarun? Yeah. You haven't gone yet.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that the best player won. I mean, on the men's side, Sinner won, and I mean, his level was just too good. Whether you talk about the physical, mental, technical side of it, I mean, it's very difficult to hang with him in the baseline. He just takes your time away and sends you running corner to corner, goes line, goes cross. I mean, he can do anything he wants, it appears at this point. His serve is also getting much better. I mean, I thought Sasha was a worthy finalist. I mean, I'm like, generally, I really get happy when I see that players who find solutions to problems, right? So Sasha definitely had problems in terms of putting opponents away, and especially with his serves. Same with Sabalenka. But he in the interview after the Novak match, he mentioned that the thing that he worked on was lowering his serve toss, which really helped. And I mean, this is something great to learn from. I mean, it's the growth mindset, which Alex always keeps alluding to. Like, I mean, he fixed the toss and you could see the results. I mean, against Novak, whenever he needed a first serve, he hit it. And whenever he needed a good second serve, he got that in as well. So to me, like, it's like a great example of, working on a skill, improving it, and showing how it's done on the big stage. Props to him.
Yeah.
Alex, Greg, any broad trends that you saw, any youngsters, new players that you're excited about, any trends that you're seeing in the game that stood out to you guys?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, what stood out to me most this tournament was, and I guess it's lately, it's more and more starting to stand out. But when Keys had her interview after, so not on stage, so it was, with the journalists and reporters and stuff, she was asked like, what is the difference? Like, why could you do it now? And her answer was she had to make some really big changes this year, and she she had to really look in the mirror, and it was like look at some uncomfortable things that was just not working. And I think her husband, who is her coach now too, he asked her so what do you want to do, or what do you want to do this year? What are we gonna do? How are we gonna make a difference? And her answer eventually was like her working on herself and doing a ton of therapy. And that really helped her. So it was more about her growth in herself rather than, and of course the tennis follows, and that's a huge part. But I really like that answer, and I actually think I've seen that in Sabalenka as well. I think she's a very grounded person. I think she knows herself really well, and Badosa as well. So I feel like the trend that I'm starting to see in all these players, and on the men's side too, I think these players that are really starting to win and are very successful, it's because they're pretty grounded as a person and they're pretty happy in life. So it's not like with someone like Zverev, to me, I think he is improving and growing as a person. I think that's also like standing out because he's been through a lot in the last few years.
Right.
And I definitely don't want to write him off as like a bad guy or anything like that. But I think he's still very much like growing and finding his just balance in life and not, proving himself as much. So that's what's standing out to me when I'm listening to the interviews and I'm seeing what's been happening this year. And then when I see Keys's interview, and then actually, which was really cool too, Serena responded to that interview with a comment saying something like, it's really like showing the growth you've made as a person. And that's really cool and very important. Good for you. So that for me stood really out, and I really, really liked seeing.
Amazing stuff. Yeah. Craig, how about you?
Yeah, so I think there's like from head to toe, it was that phrase A to Z.
Yeah.
From head to toe. But so I think the head part is key, and I'll get to that in a second. But the feet, and the movement are. We have this phrase at the club. We talk about feet work makes the dream work instead of what is it, teamwork makes the dream work. So I call it feet work makes the dream work. And so footwork, the young trend that's happening right now, the between Leonard Tien and all these great young people, and even Shelton, who's been around for a while, but all these great physical movers and these young men and young women who have all this great energy. I mean, it's massive. It's the modern game, but it only gets you third round, fourth round. Even a guy who's I love watching training video. I love when I go to Indian Wells. I watch the practice courts. I watch the training. I love watching the training that these athletes put online, men and women. It's just some of the tennis training is absolutely intense, and the footwork. I watched Alec De Minar's off season in bits and pieces. Dude was just a monster. Now, that got him a quarterfinal whooping from Sinner, but he was dismantling people up until then. Like, he was just on unbelievable run. And I predicted, I was like, this is going to be a great quarterfinal. And now what that tells me is this mental part of the game for all these players is when you can combine those two things, that head and feet combo, that's it. And it's the mental game with the footwork. And you can have, Djokovic was maybe the ultimate technique fiend, but I think his best thing was his movement and his decision making. And you can see that and now in all these players coming, that's this next level of video game that we're in. Is technique is one thing, but you could have a shovel weird forehand, you can have a perfect forehand, but if you can get there and you can be smart enough to think on the fly and know what kind of shot you want to hit, and the ball's chest high, well, it doesn't matter if you have a funky grip or a great grip or whatever, you're gonna smoke it. And I don't care if you're the number one lady in the world or the number one man in the world. And Coco Gauff's a great example at the forehand, right? She maybe, I don't know if she tweaked her forehand as much as she moves even better now than she did 2 years ago. So, it's just hitting that ball in a better spot and being a smarter decision maker, than all these players were the year before and the year before. So, that head to toe thing, I think, is really big for me.
Incredibly,
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Craig, if I may. And this is something that I have had to, figure out myself too. So it's pertinent for me as well. How do you become a better decision maker? Like, is it doing drills, repetitions? Is it getting coaching? Is it watching and analyzing matches? Is it watching yourself on video? Or is it just playing more and more matches? How do you improve the decision making? Because that seems not so easy for our level, at least.
Watching yourself on video is humbling and dangerous. You have to have a thick skin when you watch yourself. It's like, that's not exactly what I envisioned when I was hitting the ball.
Who's this dumbass Nick?
Yes, yes. So, I think tennis, we all agree. We talked about this when I joined your podcast, halfway through this year. We all agree that tennis is a movement-based sport.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be some sort of mover to have any sort of level, whatever level you determine of success, to hit a tennis ball. You have to be able to get to the ball and hit it in a somewhat optimal position. So I think if you're not a great mover, and we've seen this Soham and team so often, where, I mean, Sinner was not a great mover coming out of the gate. Sabalenka was not a great mover out of the gate. And they're excellent movers now, but they're not the best movers in the sport. But they're excellent movers now. And that's the key. It's like, if you can raise your floor like they have, like their ceiling was already massive, right? Like they're bombing aces and they're crushing forehands. And what do we teach? I'm teaching my kids, it's like trying to hit good serves and hit as many forehands as you can. But at some point, when your ceiling is super good, you've got to think about raising your floor. And Sabalenka's floor, Sinner's floor, Gauff's floor, they might have been compromised by certain movement items. And you look at them now, based on where they were 12, 18, 24 months ago, and they're that much better. So I think it's a little bit of belief, it's a little bit of coaching, it's a lot of hard work. Whether you are Fed or Rafa or Steffi, Martina, though you hear the stories of them, and if you watch practice, I know, Soham, you like the practice course as much as I do. Alex, you've lived it. Tarun, I know you love the little cookies of people, how they work hard and all the engineering behind that. But they always made practice harder than their matches.
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, right? Like they would put themselves through those paces so the matches would be, even Fed looked amazing on the court. But if you watched Fed, I watched Fed with his physio and on a court with Paul Anacone and he was working his ass off. And then I go watch him on the court warming up at Indian Wells with Pablo Carreno Busta. And dude was looking like he was watching his daughter do ballet or something. It was like, it wasn't even, I'm like, what are you even doing working out, like warming up for a match like this? And it looked almost rude to his hitting partner because he wasn't even trying. But he had put in all that hard work. So all he had to do was loosen up his muscles and get his blood flow and get in that mental space. And so I think depending on who you are is going to dictate what sort of, movement potential that you need to try to achieve. So, I think you can come at it from many different angles. And I know we've talked about this before with Alex too, where, depending on what your cookie is for movement or getting better, you can approach it from a handful of different perspectives. But I think raising that floor when you're an exceptional player, I think raising that floor is more important than maybe working on the ceiling.
No, thank you, Craig. I mean, really great way to put it. And Tarun, I want to ask you a quick question too, because we really want to get into the, decision making, how it's relevant to the mental side of the sport. When we say that it's more like, it really can help decision making. Maybe win matches. It can also affect you, prevent you from winning matches. Being in certain situations during a match. So Tarun, you and I have spoken at length off off record, not on podcast, but this is an opportunity for us to bring in a topic, a discussion about, there is this common word that's out there, right? And Tarun, you're probably the best person to explain this. So take it away. You give us a little bit about what choking, quote unquote, means to you, and let's see if we can all have some different perceptions and opinions about how we can tackle the psychological aspects or the mental aspects of the sport.
Yeah, thanks. So for that segue into the meat and bones of our podcast, which is a discussion on choking. So we looked at pro tennis. A lot of this is prevalent in all levels of our sport, more so in the juniors, I suppose, and the amateur levels. The two words which I actually hate, they are the twin C's, choking, and the opposite of choking is clutch. So, often people, I think it's a very loosely defined catch-all term, choking, where, when a person is feeling the physiological effects of nerves, number one, or the other case where the person has fought a close match and towards the end simply things go downhill and they lose the match, or three, they just don't show up for the match. I mean, you can see them completely botch it. So I think it's a catch-all term to say that, okay, here is everything on the line and this person didn't show up, didn't win when it mattered. The other person wanted it more. These are these cliched narratives in sport, not just limited to tennis, where it seems to suggest that this person showed up and wanted it more and did not choke, and whereas the other person just failed. So I feel that from a coaching perspective, it's a wrong way to coach us, a wrong way to think about it. The opposite of choking is clutch, which says that, oh, when it mattered most, this person showed up and just went for it. Whereas the reality is the margins are so thin that a match is decided in a few points. So, in my opinion, choking is. We need to dig deeper into finding the specific reasons of loss. Maybe it's a physical issue, maybe it's a mental issue, decision error, a skill error, person feeling nerves. In short, it's a skill that can be worked on. So I just kind of set the broad narrative on this. So I let Alex and Craig, who have coached and experienced it at a much higher level. So, Alex, what do you think?
I mean, I like what you said. I agree. There's so much more to it.
Yeah.
And this is where I think everyone has their own perspective on it and probably strengths and weaknesses in.
Right.
I think what I said earlier about like Keys and just like the
Right.
trend of even Sabalenka, and I see it in Coco, and I see it on the men's side, like the balance in life more. I think that really comes through too, because
Mhm.
the nerves are going to happen to everyone.
Right.
And I remember Novak saying like, yeah, people think that I'm not nervous, but it's like I have crazy negative thoughts the whole match come up, and he has learned to breathe through it, and he uses his tools. But I also think that he has gotten more grounded in life. And what I mean with grounded in life, I mean, that's super deep, right? Yeah, I think you kind of were on this journey of like getting more comfortable with ourselves. And I think when you're a tennis player and it's such an individual sport and it's so intense, and if you're like supposed to be so good already when you were 11 or 12, and this is not just for the pros, this is also for, kids that are playing high school or that are like 7 or 8, and, people are already saying how good they are. I think it already develops this thing of like, well, if I don't win, then I'm not good. And what does that mean about me? So I think that's kind of, I think, a big one that happens and that I see happen around me. And I know also from my personal experience. Um, but then of course you have the tools. The tools are extremely important of learning how to calm yourself down, um, how to think about how you're playing. Are you, what is important? Do you need to make bigger targets? You need to figure out what works for you and what are smart decisions. Um, and then also look at like the team, the people you have around you. I think Sinner has done a really good job with that. I think Cahill, he's just such a
Yeah.
um, amazing person to have in your corner. He's so level-headed and he has
Yeah.
experienced so much. And I think with Sinner, I think he is also a very grounded person. Um, but yeah, so as I said, I think the tools are key too. And then also your team is very important. People that keep you grounded. Um, and then I also think it's a little bit of like DNA. There's a little bit of that too,
Mhm.
so I think there's many pieces to it, but I believe that everyone can grow and improve in the area of like pressure situations. What about you, Greg? What do you think?
Yeah, I think when it's regards to pressure and like we said, the two C's being clutch or choke, those things are very personal, and people get there and they arrive in those places on different journeys, right? So there's also a micro and a macro, in my opinion. There's the macro choke where I know I've seen it where we're watching some of our students practice and grind for months and months getting ready for a tournament. And then they go out and play in a tournament, and you're like, who's that? And they don't play like they do in a tournament, like they have been practicing for the last 3 or 4 months. And it's this weird, their forehands, they're not hitting out, so to speak, on their forehand. They're not driving the ball. It's just this, they're holding back. And that's maybe a different kind of choke. And then there's the micro choke, which is feeling the pressure of a certain point or time, a delineated point in a match that maybe somebody isn't prepared or mentally able to handle. And I don't think those two things can be very different, because those have to be addressed, I think, in a slightly different way. When you have somebody who is young and is training to play in their first handful of tournaments, and they're going to perform, so to speak, in front of their coaches and parents, in front of peers, that to me is much different than somebody who's a polished professional who might not play a particular tiebreaker correctly. And I think those two things are definitely different mental aspects that we need to be sensitive to. So,
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you for those insights, Alex and Craig.
I want to share like my own personal journey on this because it's more important than the terminology of choking or being clutch. I think we all come from different backgrounds. We all have had different experiences growing up. Some of us have gotten trained, some of us haven't. So, and some of us in our growing up years have had to deal with stressful pressure situations and hardships. And as you grow older and you start being able to handle those situations, and I'm not talking about tennis here, I'm talking about daily life, whether it's family, whether it's school, whether it's people around you, whether it's certain situations. If you have been in those difficult situations early on in your life and you're able to come out of it and you're able to handle, and you've been successfully able to handle them over the years, I think you become a much more you become good at understanding stressful situations, and you start like sort of being in the moment because you already can draw upon experiences where you've had it worse. So for me, when I started, so I've had a lot of things go my way, a lot of things also not go my way. So I've learned over the years on how to deal with certain situations which have been difficult. So when I first started playing tennis and when I started playing tournaments, I was, and whether I was winning or losing, I used to play, I was very nervous, I think, in certain situations because, you have certain expectations of your ability, of yourself, and you have to be really true to and very honest about your own abilities. Because some people, I feel, and it's honestly happened to me, that's why I'm talking about it. I thought I was better than I actually was, and my results were not showing that. So I had spoken about this in probably the first episode. I had to re-baseline my expectations. That was like the one of the first steps that I did. And then be present in the moment when you're playing, rather than thinking about results, outcome, all of that. It really doesn't matter. You have to take it small step at a time. Just play each point. Now I'm talking about tennis. Play each point. Don't really worry about the future, right? If you're like down 5-0, you can still come back. If you're up 5-1, you need to close a match, right? So I've had to deal with certain situations, and I think I've gotten better over the years because I was used to be very nervous. I have choked. I'm using this terminology. I've like lost matches from winning positions, and I've also like won matches from losing positions. And I nowadays, when I step on the court, because I've gone through all these experiences, I feel more confident in like in any situation because I'm actually enjoying the sport more and just being in the moment than before, where I started worrying about, oh no, I think I'm going to lose. This is going to be bad. So basically, my overall point is it really depends on how you have grown up, a lot of it, and how the ability to handle stress uh, in matches, in any situations in life, right? And some people are just really good at it. Like I think Novak is really good at it because he has seen a tough life growing up. He comes from Serbia. It hasn't been easy. So I think he's mentally wired, and plus he's done a lot of like meditation and all of that stuff.
Right.
Rafa is mentally tough because the way he trained in juniors, it was very difficult. And the way Spanish people train, it's like physically like draining. Like you have to be like mentally and physically strong. And which is why I think Rafa and Novak are just more mentally tough than maybe say Fed. Because Fed is like just the best talent I have ever seen almost after like Rod Laver. I haven't seen Rod Laver, but from what I've heard. But I think Novak and Rafa did a really good job in really handling pressure situations really well, which I don't think a lot of people are able to do. And this is why I'm going to ask you guys, like, my honest opinion is I don't think Sasha Zverev. I don't think he's there yet. Whereas I think Sinner, for example, what he showcased in this tournament is I think there are certain people who are just mentally more tough and stronger, which is why they'll end up winning many more Grand Slams. So the mental part of the game is like super important, and like Alex said, it's who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
I
So you're
think who you surround yourself with is important, because if you just take and this is a microcosm, but I'm going to take what Soham said specifically and apply it to the AO final. And if you look at Zverev's team, it's been him and his dad, largely.
brother.
Brother. And his brother is actually, obviously, not only super talented, but also a great competitor too. But kind of tunnel vision, family oriented, one voice, one leader, one sort of avenue. Sinner had that for a short period of time, but then he opened up to Darren Cahill, a new physio. Um, Things blossomed and things were different. And you do have to find that person's cookie. You need to find their little, what makes them tick. And if you're kind of stuck in this tunnel, and for some people it's great. Like I think, like what Soham said about Rafa, it's like if you have somebody with the drive from the juniors, like Rafa had, and he's got his uncle Tony, and it's the Spanish X-drill training and intense, 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 and that's your type of client, and that's what Rafa was, then that's what works. But I don't know if that's the case with Sasha. And it's, if he had a fresh voice, I think it would do him really well, kind of like it did Sinner, and kind of like it's done for Maddie. And I think it's a lot more complicated with Maddie in a good way, because she got married too, and that's a great fit with her coach, and he's a former player. But I think you've got to find out what makes you tick, and I think that's important for us, Alex, right? And Soham, for what you guys do with your groups, and Tarun, what you do with the kids in high school. You got to find out what you can have our philosophies, and we've talked about coaching philosophies before, but then you have to figure out what your clients or your students or who your coaching partner is, what player is, what makes them tick. And that's really the secret sauce.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I like the segue you took there. Because like what is success is like for everyone is such a different answer. It's like if someone becomes number one in the world, does that mean that they're so much better at everything and they're handling pressure better? Or is it like, no, that was actually their dream, and that was meant for them. And it just because of all the other reasons, it just ended up happening. It doesn't mean that someone like Zverev isn't really successful. But then the question is, what is success? Is he successful because he now is number two in the world? Like I like Monfils' answer. Like the reporter asked him,
Yeah.
are like, do you want, is it winning a Grand Slam your dream? Something like that.
Yeah.
And then he was like, no, that's not my dream. Like my dream is, with my family and with my wife. And right now, to be honest, I'm living my dream, and you can just really feel that that's really real.
Yeah.
And the reporter asked another question. He's like, no, 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 like that's not my dream. It might be yours, but it's not my dream.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's what I mean. I feel like, you might be number 100 in the world, but you've had an amazing career and you did exactly what you wanted to do and you learned a lot. And then afterwards you have a different career and you feel really good in life. And, like I think it's a very broad question. And I think also just this whole topic, I think there's so many different angles and it's so personal. So I don't necessarily think because you're number one, you know it all. I think there's plenty of times people have been number one and they were probably miserable, So
I can see it. a great example of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Even Graf too, Steffi too, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something to this. Think about what we're saying. We've got
Yeah.
Agassi, no relationship or exiting a relationship with Brooke Shields in the mid 90s. Then hooks up and has a beautiful relationship with Steffi Graf and becomes a double. He won the career Grand Slam twice.
Yeah.
We've got Madison Keys getting married,
Mm.
winning her first Grand Slam. We've got, who am I missing here? Who is also, I was just thinking about somebody else. Oh,
Hey, it
Monfils.
makes sense. There's just more.
Monfils and Svitolina
Yeah.
both having a kid in their 30s, and then all of a sudden it's like you said, Alex, he maybe and she have achieved their dream of having this beautiful family. They found each other, bringing beautiful babies into the world, and then they're having a second career almost that they met, arguably you could say maybe wouldn't have had if they didn't have that family, because of this whatever
Yeah.
unquantifiable joy you can bring to the table with that. So it's kind of interesting. We're talking about choking and clutch,
Right.
and
Right.
it's gone inverse, backwards, upside down with
That's true.
beautiful
Yeah.
relationships and people winning majors. So yeah, pretty interesting.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. I think they're great perspectives to have. I think what you're really saying is that if I understand it right, people are trying to derive too much of self-worth from tennis, where it's not, and that puts them under, I guess, some kind of mental stress. And part of it is just looking at the bigger picture, I guess, in life, and tennis is just a small part of it. I think that's the thing that we are just seeing now.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like,
Yeah.
you shouldn't take things too seriously.
Right.
But one of the things that you did mention, Tarun, and I think
Yeah.
it's if somebody has a weakness per se, right?
Right.
It's like I understand that you're of the opinion that you can always grow and figure out a way to
Yes.
problem
Yes.
solve and turn the weakness into maybe a strength, possibly, or at least go in that direction, right, Tarun?
Right. So like I said before, what I'm trying to, like, my theory, and from what I have seen and read about the sport, and analyzing this, is basically when somebody so-called wilts under pressure and the game completely nosedives, it's usually there is an underlying weakness, whether it's technical, whether it's maybe tactical or a decision making, or just plain, they just got a physiological thing, just nerves got them. There is something deeper, and often the team knows about it, but it manifests itself as to the rest of the world as, look, they failed on the big stage. Like, if you think about it, like, if you have even like a small technical weakness on your forehand, like, for example, Alex has often suggested that my grip needs to be more Western. so now imagine if I'm hitting forehands with a continental grip at 5 all, 30 all, will I have, obviously, like that, against better players, it will be exposed whether I have actually done well to get to 5 all against a better player. So my thesis is that, like, what manifests itself as somebody, kind of losing their game is and what appears as choking to the rest of the world is really there is a deeper underlying weakness that is being exposed at the bigger stage.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and it's very
I
specific for different people. I don't know how, Alex, your experience has been, playing
no,
and
you're
coaching.
saying something that is
Yeah.
landing for me for sure too, because
Yeah.
with everything that we've been saying, like that's also been my journey of, like, like self-worth through tennis, and that everything was tennis, and then
Right.
a lot of pressure, but also my backhand was much weaker than the rest of my game.
Yeah.
And that was a big block. I found ways to get around it with tools, but it still was something that really, like, kept me back. So I 100% agree with that.
Oh, I remember playing Alex, and I think you are able to almost camouflage that weakness pretty well by doing a few things.
Almost.
Yeah.
No, it's only to a certain level. I think you
So I
can.
think
I mean, there are players that can actually, but not many.
I think depending on what you want out of life or in tennis, people are disciplined in a certain way to be like, no, I really want this. I really want to improve, right? And some people are like, no, I'm pretty satisfied with where I am. And,
Yeah.
it really depends on your priority at the end of the day. If you really want to improve, I think some people are like, I mean, I see people like Sinner. I watched him practice at Indian Wells. He is so focused. Like, it's almost perfection,
Mm.
balance, like razor focus. And I am not surprised by just the way I saw him practice last year at Indian Wells, that he has 3 Grand Slams. He's going to get many more. So, and then there are people like, I don't know, um, who can I name? Like, I don't know, Bernard Tomic or someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, I don't think he cares about winning slams. So, or some people are just out there to entertain. Like
Yeah.
Bublik. Bublik is really, really good actually. But he enjoys entertaining. So some people are into that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think on the end of the day, it's also like no one can make you like want something. You can have some influence, but it's like, and you see this a lot with like coaches and players and parents and players.
Yeah.
If the parent or the coach wants it more than the player, it might work for a few years, but then there's going to be this huge crash, or there's going to be some big dilemma, right?
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't work like
Yeah.
that. I think the younger that already gets like worked through somewhat, the better that path can be. um but yeah, I think that is really important to really find. And I think that's where it gets back to the responsibility to the coach of like, I mean, I'm guilty of like having wanted and still at times wanted more than the player. And then I have to like check myself. Why am I pushing this player? Like, yes, it's important to motivate them or like to hold them accountable to some things for sure. But I also think it's like figuring out what they actually really want and
Yeah.
not putting like the standards here,
Yeah. It's true.
super high. And I think that's for parents. I think that's the biggest challenge too. And this is not easy. Huh? I think I'm not saying that with a judgment, because it happens to me on a weekly basis that I have a moment that I'm like, oh, did it again. And I think that's a challenge for parents very much, of like when they wanted more for their kid. And then it's also hard for the parent because it's like, yeah, but they also need to learn these things and values and qualities. So I think there's a lot in there in that.
Yeah, like totally agree, Alex. I have a quick question for Craig. I mean, for all the kids that you teach, right, or have taught over the years, Alex, you can answer too. Do you see a positive, like, do you see a correlation between the people who are like super, super disciplined in practice, really wanted bad, to do well in tennis, and they're just mentally stronger than the others? Is there a positive, and they perform better in tournaments?
I'll give you the most non-technical answer ever. It's the fact that so yes is the answer, and part B of the answer is that they love tennis,
Mm.
and they love it more than they love anything else that they like, that their parents tell them to like, that their schedule dictates. They just love tennis. So all of my students who have transcended whatever it is that maybe we're asking the question about or I'm trying to answer, the violin classes, the extracurricular activities, the parents and the kids have so many interests, right? And it's not all the
Right.
parents, but kids have interest other than tennis, parents have
That's true.
interest other than tennis. But when the child or the player always comes back to tennis, that shows that the ultimate love for tennis will afford you the availability to achieve whatever that level is, that extra sizzle in that steak, so to speak. Because there's a lot of good players out there that I've taught who only come 3 or 4 times a week, couple group lessons, couple private lessons, and they still have their violin and they still have their other circles of social activity.
Mhm.
But then I compare them to the kids who are there 6 and 7 days a week, and there's almost no comparison, because they absolutely are. Tennis is what they live and breathe, and at least for most of the kids that I've taught, it's been in a healthy way. That's where they want to be. That's where they choose to be. That they've been mature enough to express that to their parents, or the parents have been mature enough to have a conversation with their kid that it's healthy, and it's not necessarily. I know Alex has been through some examples that haven't been so healthy, but I think when a student loves tennis, it's the ultimate conqueror. It's the ultimate immeasurable checkmate on all the measurables that we're trying to talk about, or at least that you asked me, Soham. So yeah, it's the love of tennis that, and it may be a little bit of access for sure, because there's getting to the courts and the ball machines, and
right.
We're not there, Alex and I, and you guys, we're not there 7 days a week with these kids, right? So they're getting hits in on their own, and they're getting access to the courts and so forth. So
yeah, I think love of the game, I 100% agree with that. And I think that like the more that you love the game, the more that it becomes like your journey, and to bring it back to Katie Volines from NorCal, like her journey is tennis right now, right? And so that's where she's learning life right now until that changes. And I think that's I think it really depends on the intensity of your journey. If your journey is like you're a good 8 UTR and you're playing 5-6 times a week, and you might play D2 or you might play D1, that is a very different thing than if you are truly trying to play pro,
Right.
or maybe will try to play pro, or you're trying to be number one in the nation or one in California. Like it's such a difference between those levels. And I think that's also the difference in the people that personality that comes with that a lot of times. I mean, I think you have also people like Sinner that probably never really had like super intense journey. Maybe he did. I don't know. He doesn't come across that way.
yeah, I don't think he did until he was like 14 or 15, and then all of a sudden he realized, oh wow, tennis could be really good to me, and then it started to get pretty serious.
Yeah. So that, I think it's a love of the game for sure, and then sometimes other things come along, but there must be that love of the game if you're really sticking with it and doing it so much.
Yeah, completely agree. And Tarun, I'm sure that we are so blessed to have Craig and Alex share their perspectives on this, because we don't always have them. They're out there working hard, training future number one players in the world.
That's a little much.
Yeah, definitely, it's incredible perspectives to have on this topic, because I think a lot of people, whether it's the amateur competitor, the club player, and more importantly juniors, they do struggle with this. And it's great to have your perspectives, Alex, Craig, and so on.
And hopefully at Tennishackery going forward, as we can help bridge that gap and probably help juniors or even adults, right? Help them from part of the game. And this, we're talking about tennis.
Indeed. So I guess with that, we come to the end of episode 20. I definitely wanted to mention that this is not the last time you're going to be hearing about this topic. In the coming months, we have more discussions on this topic of the mental side of tennis, choking, clutch, what is this? And, a lot of practical solutions to this, a more in-depth analysis. So we also intend to bring experts on. So please stay tuned. And I will launch again into the marketing spiel. So again, at Tennishackery with a Y is our social media handle. This is the place where we discuss all things about the fundamentals, fitness, and the mental side of the game. You can find us on Instagram, where we are extremely active, Facebook and X. A lot of the posts go there. We cross-post there and share a lot of content and media. And tennishackery.com is our website, which we launched the end of 2024. The video version of the podcast goes to YouTube, and the audio version goes to Apple Podcasts, Spotify. So you can find us on your favorite podcasting apps. Please, please, please like, share, subscribe, comment, review. Any feedback that you give will help us grow. So with that, thank you very much for being a part of Tennis Hackery episode 20. And bye, everyone. Bye.
Take care.
Yeah.